This is a special presentation of the Ticats Audio Network.
Great to have you with us, and this is a good one to be with us for. I'm RJ Broadhead, joined by the newest member of the Hamilton Sports Group, Steve Milton. You're going to be a multi-platform columnist with Ticats Audio Network, Forge Audio Network. You're going to be website. You're going to be doing a little bit of everything. Tell us how this all came about.
Well, the main impetus, I think, RJ, and you and I have talked about this working together again, like we did so often over the years.
Yep.
And it came up when I was still working at the newspaper, and when that ended for me, I wasn't ready to be done. I'm not going to let somebody else tell me when I'm done, right? I mean, that sounds like an old player, doesn't it?
It does, but that's the right way to go.
The Ticats had shown some cursory interest at one point because they wanted to build up the whole, I would call their media situation, right? It become more of a media type thing, and to expand it, to take the good work that you guys and men and women have done in Ticats Audio Network and Forge Audio Network, both of which, by the way, that your viewers may not understand, are radical concepts for their time, and it is the
Absolutely.
way of the future. It is the way of the future, and the Ticats showed that they were going to. They wanted to expand that a little more, all platforms, including more on the Forge, and enhancing the relationship between the fans, people that care, and people that only sort of partially care. They want to expand that. Now, in this day and age, I'm just coming out of an industry where I spent half a century. It was contracting and continued to contract and continue to contract. And here is a group that is taking basically the same principle, which is it's all in sports, but it's a journalism. It's a type of journalism, and it's expanding it. Who wouldn't want to be part of that? Exactly opposite of the trend that the world is going, and I applaud that, and I want to be part of that. I've obviously and wrote about it in the first column, which appears today, that I want to be part of wherever that goes, and investing time and resources in making the connection between fans and enhancing sports fans' experience. I've spent my whole life, going back to I was 17 years old, in and around professional sport. So this was a great opportunity. You want to be part of something new, and this is, while we are advancing principles that already exist, it is new. It is new, this kind of commitment. I think it'll set the tone for a lot of things in the future. And I like sort of the idea of the Ticats trying new things and having the guts to hire a veteran, and I would say hardcore, journalist. That takes corporate confidence and takes corporate sort of belief in itself that you can handle basically an outsider coming inside.
Also, it's an easy hire, Steve. You're a Hall of Famer. You're a Canadian Football Hall of Famer.
You know what that means? It means you outlast everybody. So
you stick around long enough.
Stick around long enough, and you become a legend. And as long as as we said, with my 17th century judge's hair here, so.
Now that you're going to be now that you're going to be appearing more, are you going to be down the hair dye aisle, or are you going to stick with that?
Oh no, I think I'll stick with that. It's sort of
I like it.
If you got it flaunted, right? I mean, obviously I'm a long-haired guy. I don't think you saw me during the pandemic when I had what it looked like the greatest hits of the '60s band album.
Yeah, well, I think you got it cut.
Yeah, I know.
I would have seen you in 2021 a little bit.
That's right. But... Yeah, and I had it really, really, really long then. But I'm an ex-hippie. All right, I grew up in the '60s, right? So I bring that sensibility to a lot of things in my life, and a lot of it is what's on top. Let's say snow in the I won't even use that phrase. Snow on the roof, fire in the furnace, right? So
you had to do it.
I had to do it. Sorry.
Well, it's interesting you bring up how Ticats Audio Network launched in 2021. Forge Audio Network has been fantastic, and I remember having conversations with Matt Afanek and Scott Mitchell. I was the first hire of the Ticats Audio Network, and I'm very proud of that. But when the concept was brought to me, it was brand new. There weren't a lot of teams doing their own broadcasts and having their own network. And I think the way regional rights have gone in a lot of professional sports, that the Tiger Cats are kind of the front runners in that aspect. I think we'll see a lot more of this going forward. And it's been great going into the fourth year now and covering the team. Can you still be critical of the Tiger Cats or the Forge in this role, Steve, if you have to be?
I think as long as it's fair, we've discussed this at length. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think there was wiggle room on that. Now, I do understand a couple of things that I'm working for the team, and I think some people might say he can't do that, but like it's a little bit different than newspapers that way, and part of it is because of the half century in journalism. I trust myself. I trust my own principles, and I won't cross any lines that I can't cross. In other, I mean, from a journalistic standpoint. So there'll be, I'm sure, times when stuff is well, it's too much inside stuff and delicate stuff but for the most part, the theory is be fair, be honest, analyze when it analyzes. Not everything I did at the Spec was ripping the Tiger Cats. I mean, it definitely wasn't that. I mean, there was plenty of opportunity for that for the last couple of years because, let's be honest, it was 2 years of 8-10 and losing playoff games, right? So they made the playoffs, which is a great thing. And we always try to point that out, but there's a lot of other things as well that go into reporting, and much of that is ferreting out and telling the stories of the people. Storytelling is what I do. Criticism is part of that storytelling, but storytelling is the larger thing, and that, my understanding, is where we want to progress this, where it's going to evolve. And this is an evolution, it's not a revolution. It's an evolution because of what you people have done already in the audio and what the Ticat Forge websites have done in basic reporting. I think we're just going to expand that and also amplify it. And that's why it's called a columnist and not a content provider, because columnist implies that there's analysis, that there's criticism which is fair when it is merited, and I think you'll particularly see that on game day, because that's when it's hot. That's when people want to know what somebody who's been around it since I've been around the CFL. I think I was at my first game in 1957.
Wow! Was that as a fan?
Yeah, and actually I was at a game that it was at Varsity Stadium for the Argos, and that's how long ago it was. They've played, I think, in 3 or 4 stadia since then, and the record was set there that'll never be broken, and it happened right in front of me and made me an instant CFL fan. And it was back in those days. It was recorded for years as a punt return, but only because punt returns and missed field goals had the same rules. You could not block for the player. It was 1 against 12, right?
Wow.
So it was actually a missed field goal, and somebody took it. I want to say Claire Exelby or somebody like that, one of those Argos that played for 20 years, on the one side of the end zone and threw it right across the other side, 2 yards from the end, to a guy named Dave Mann, whose nickname was Superman, who played for the Chicago Cardinals and been an all-star football player in the NFL, and had come up to play for the Argos because, believe it or not, they paid more. So he gets the ball and runs straight down the sideline, and we've got seats on the 4th row, and he runs right by me, and he goes 137 yards for the touchdown. That record can never be broken because the end zones were 25 yards deep then. They're down 20. So the most that you can go for a touchdown was 130 yards, and he ran 135 or 4 or whatever it is. So it will always stand as the record. Instant fan right away. And from that point on, I followed it, wanted to play in the CFL, and then God's practical joke got in the way, made you 5'6". Isn't that funny? And then keeps shrinking you for the rest of your life. That's the other part of the joke, right? So, so I always thought that if I ever got in the Hall of Fame, it would be as a player. Well, I never got a sniff, I called the Argos during my high school years, and I played for in those times they had farm teams, right? And I played for the ORFU. You were owned by your local team, your rights, and then there was also senior ORFU, which was semi-pro, and I played for them in the last 2 or 3 years in the early 70s. For ironically, the team London Lords, whose players were owned territorially by the Tiger Cats. Now, I didn't have a sniff. Lots of people did. Lots of people off our team. I think 15 guys on our team played in the CFL. So I saw them going up towards the CFL or coming back down from it. One of whom made the Hall of Fame, the late Glenn Weir. So there's quite a connection there between myself and this league, the CFL.
Well, I'm just going to go grab a coffee, Steve. You continue on. No,
sorry, I do this. Yeah,
hey, great story, and you're employee of the month.
Yeah.
After that, if that's the sort of information that people are going to get, whether they're reading, listening, watching you, that is some fantastic historical stuff.
Well, you'd only recognize this if you were a longtime fan, I think, and sort of an inside football fan. The history of returners here. Yeah. It's spectacular. I can't remember all of the names, but I can think of 3 or 4 instances in the last 15, 20 years where a returner has come in as a replacement for somebody, scored a touchdown on a return, and not got the nod the next week because the other person came back. Right?
Yeah.
Now, that with McAllister's case, it didn't, he got the job and kept the job. But some of them, and then some of them went on to do good things elsewhere. But it's just phenomenal. The number of, I think in the Jeff Reinbold era, there were something like 9 different players that took it to the house on a return, like either punt, miss field goal, or and plus, and that's just counting Speedy once, not 15 times or however many times he did it. So, yeah,
well, you've got half a century in sports. I've got almost 30 years. Working in this role. A couple of vets chatting here, Steve.
Yeah, sure.
But you talked about you being a writer. You've written a ton of books. You just haven't been writing in the newspaper. How many books have you written?
Authored or co-authored, 25, I think.
Wow.
I mean, a good chunk of those, 13, I think, on figure skating. And surprisingly, just the one on football, and that would be Angelo Mosca's autobiography, which, if you haven't read it, it's quite interesting. And when Angelo said, "Boy, I got a story for you, and I've got the title for you," and that kind of thing, I'd written a lot of books, and I said, "Oh yeah, okay, Ange, sure." And then he tells me his story, and I'll never forget it. We were sitting in his beautiful home, his and Helen's beautiful home on the lake or on the canal, and down by Welland or by St. Catharines, and he told me there was these high, slippery bar stools that were sitting at his table. He liked, he's a big guy, so he didn't want to have to sink down in a low chair. So we sat on those. And as he told me the story, right off the top, I remember going limp and slipping and sliding right off the chair. Like he caught me by surprise and what I'm referring to, of course, is his race. And that's how he started talking. He said, "You don't know this. Most people don't know this, but I am technically black." And then he said, "Now look at my face knowing that." And you go, "Whoa," And that whole story and about the anger of the household he grew up, it was, and the anger that came in him, it explained so much about what he did, but also remorse. And incredible remorse and wanting to change himself. It was a spectacular experience doing that book. Probably right there, my number 1 or 2 experiences in all those books, writing books, was that one.
Yes, this is, of course, Steve Milton. I think most everybody knows Steve, whether you've seen him, heard him, or read some of his books or articles. I'm RJ Brodhead. Great to have you with us on this special presentation. I have to tell a story about you, Steve. You probably don't remember this, but when I first came to Toronto to work in sports, I was early 20s, just out of Saskatchewan, didn't know anyone. I'm at a Leafs practice. We're getting ready for scrums, and nobody knows me. you came over, you introduced yourself, you told me about you, and if I had any questions, hey, welcome, and it took Damian Cox 10 years to talk to me. I can say that because Damian and I are friends now. But,
yeah, he did the Red Fisher. He did the Red Fisher thing on you. I don't talk to rookies, right? Red was
exactly.
a big writer in Montreal. Yeah, so.
But it was a little thing in that time that meant a lot to me, and I'm sure you don't even remember, but it stuck with me, and you've probably done that to dozens of young reporters and young people in the business over the years.
I certainly remember your first year there. I don't remember that particular incident, and I'm glad I didn't embarrass myself with you. But yeah, no, and you know what it's like trying to, and if anybody out there is in sports journalism or any kind of journalism, any business at all, pay it forward. Pay it forward. Most people outside of the Tiger Cats and those that are close watchers of them, which I have been for a long, long time, don't realize how much the people here, and it wasn't a huge staff, did in the last 3 years with 2 home Grey Cups, with the outdoor game, which was essentially theirs, with the hockey, with the soccer, and all those international soccer games in there, Champions League, playing soccer in the wintertime, a couple of other big events, Arkells, all of those kinds of things, which was all under their purview. And definitely the citywide Grey Cup thing, that was theirs. They basically did it. And even though CFL ostensibly ran it 3 years ago, it was the Ticats basically engineering everything. They had to, and that basically just ended in December, right? So they had a lot to sort of get over and reestablish and rest from. And sort of recalibrate because the next 3 years aren't going to look quite that. There's not going to be 2 Grey Cups here in the next 3 years as there were in the last 3 years. So it's not going to look like that. So it took a while to figure out where to go and what to do. And so we just decided on the general concept recently, just a few days ago. That's why I've been so quiet about things. I didn't want to mention anything to anybody that this may or may not happen. I didn't want to put the possibility out there in case it didn't. And so that's why we haven't nailed down everything. But you can bet that I'll be a lot on Ticat Audio with you and with others. I'll be doing notebooks. That's one of the journalistic, mainstream, heritage journalistic things we're going to be bringing to the site is a notebook type of thing, both oral and in print, tying a lot of things together.
Explain that, Steve, for maybe some people who don't know.
Are types of things where you might have 7 or 8. Let's say I'm at a Ticat practice during training camp. That's where it'll happen the most because there are so many things going on there, and you might have 8 different 4 paragraphs. Like we're talking about the print part here. The 4 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs of saying, hey, so-and-so's looking really, really good, and did you know that he played his college ball at North Texas State, where former Ticat quarterback Dane Evans coached in the pandemic year. Those little connection type things, and those things lead to more type things. And this player looks good, and he may be, and then you segment them into, so you've heard about this player a little bit, now here's a little more about this player, and then I will take those and that notebook and also do an audio broadcast and make perhaps a visual podcast of things slightly different with a lot of the same information, and that will be done, of course, vocally. And that's what the notebooks are really good that way, because there are a lot of things that you can't blow into a full column. You should just write. Notebooks were a very, very big thing of my last several years in mainstream media, because it was a way of getting things that weren't being covered enough. You get them in a day or two later, and then upgrade them on a timeline too. Here, remember when they signed this guy 3 or 4 weeks ago? Well, here's some things that have happened to him in those 3 or 4 weeks. Those kinds of things. Now that's
little
just
snippets.
Little snippets, and
almost like social media.
Almost like social media. Very similar. Very similar. Again, this all comes back to storytelling, and storytelling part of it is repetition. I don't mean necessarily the key facts you'll always repeat. That's what storytelling is. That's what the oral tradition is, and the oral tradition and visual tradition is a big part of what we do here, particularly on the audio network. Repetition is a big part of that, but so does coming back to the same thing and adding little bits to stuff about somebody you already know. And pretty soon, in your mind, without you even knowing it, you have a larger portfolio of, let's say, whoever the right tackle is this year. Because now you've mentioned him 7 or 8 different times over the last 3 months in different contexts. All right, so that's what Notebook is. There'll be other things that we'll be doing interviews, like specific interviews, and a lot of concept pieces too. Like Forge, for instance, we're going to do a piece on the different soccer balls. That there's a different soccer ball used for CPL and Canadian Championship than there is for, say, CONCACAF, and the ball acts differently. And we can pull up film to show you exactly how it acts differently. So if they get back to CONCACAF and we see it again, we're going to do something on it. Who would have thought of that? Now, soccer people know that. Inside soccer people go, of course. Well, that's the thing. That's the good thing about being a bit of an outsider. Like, we're not total insiders on this, right? We're observers, maybe inside. Maybe we have a lot more access than most people will have observing. But to us, it's not, of course, the ball is different. Like, that's an interesting thing, right? There was a goal scored. I forget who got it. It was in one of the CONCACAF games here where the ball just went straight down and fooled the goalie because that's the way that ball acts,
Wow.
So I know, nuts, eh?
Yeah.
And if you see enough of those things, anyways, if there's things like that our viewers or readers happen to see and they wonder why, ask us those questions. Like, our emails are all over the place, right? So it's easy to get a hold of us. Say, just write in and pen in and say, hey, could you guys find out why this or that? And we'll get to it. We may not, and that's a good thing. Like in a notebook, hey, reader Bob Jones or reader Clara Smith has asked us here's what we found out. Those are the other kinds of things you can do. I mean, who knows how much of this we'll get to, but we want to. We definitely want to.
Definitely. I know the feeling, as do you, when you come across a story that isn't out there and you're able to tell that story. A little one last year is James Butler, and he said he choreographs 2 touchdown celebrations per game, and then will freelance. If he winds up getting more, he'll freelance it, but he's always got 2 in his back pocket. He's always studying. Guys are giving him little ideas. So it was just kind of fun to talk about in the broadcasts. If James Butler, the Tiger Cats are on the one, we might be seeing a choreographed celebration. Then it turned into something that Luke and I could describe to the listeners.
And how much better does that make your broadcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tremendously.
Way better.
Those little polishes, like it's like polishing the genie's lamp, like it just gives you that little, out comes the genie, like
Yeah.
and I will say to people, RJ's downplaying himself on this, that it takes work to come up with those things. First of all, you got to notice them. Second of all, you got to have the relationship with the people so they tell you and trust you that, hey, he's not going to screw up this story.
Yes.
I'm going to tell him because I trust him. So now I wasn't there when you were told that story, but I know how the process works, and that's exactly the way it works. So that speaks to your unearthing of things, and you might have heard him say something, and you could have easily just passed on it and just said, "Oh yeah, that's interesting," but you went and got more.
Yeah.
It just gave you that extra couple of minutes of great.
I always try to put myself in I'm still a fan,
right,
even though I'm a broadcaster. And so what do I want to know? And if I'm at a game or I'm watching a game or I'm listening to a game and I know if James Butler gets a touchdown, he's going to do some sort of performance, and, you kind of got to guess what it is. It's kind of exciting.
It is.
Now you're going to watch for it. That's the beauty of this sport, and we try to put pictures and insight to the readers, viewers, and listeners, and you're the perfect guy to do it, Steve.
Well, the longer we go on, and maybe I'll ask you this. How long have you been with this company now? 3 years?
2021, so this will be year 4.
Year four. Right. So there highlights from what you've seen on this team? Is there 3 or 4 that you could go, wow, I'll never forget that?
Yeah. You know, there are. It's almost more accomplishments.
Right. Because there was a lot of that. There was a lot of accumulated accomplishments in those last 3 or 4 years. Yes.
Yeah, like I go back to the East Final in 2021 and the second half against the Argos. It kind of looked bleak at halftime, and it was just an amazing. Everything came together in the second half, and making it to the Grey Cup was pretty exciting.
In the second half.
Yeah,
After a horrible first half. And remember the play that turned that game around? Dane stripped the ball. He threw an interception, and right near the end of the first half, he took the ball away. If the Argos score then, Ticats aren't going to the Grey Cup.
Yep.
They're too far behind, in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great memory. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you have a great relationship with Simone Lawrence, and he's an ambassador now. I'm going to miss him on the field for sure, but getting to know him's been great. It was a big deal last year when Bo Levi Mitchell came in. He's going to be a Hall of Famer, and I have to be honest, I'm pretty excited to see him this year. I haven't talked to Bo, so this isn't inside information, but it's just, 30 years of covering sports. I feel like he's going to be a very motivated quarterback, and I'm excited to see what he can do this year. What are your thoughts?
I feel the same way. In fact, I'm just looking out over the window here because I thought I might see Bo go into the field. He's been here at the stadium this week throwing practice, and I missed him every time. I just want to say hi. I haven't seen him all winter. I've been kind of laying low when it comes to that. I don't want players to say, "What are you doing around here?" Because then I either have to lie or I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. But the cat's out of the bag now. So I think that's interesting, and to have a backup that has shown that he can come in and do some stuff, a young backup. I think with Taylor in there, that's a really interesting thing. And all of the new guys that they signed. I mean, it's a different looking team, but kind of the same team too. And with Scott having a training camp to go here, I think he felt he was up to maybe 30-40% of the offense he would have liked to put in by the end of the year. But part of that was, you couldn't develop it because they were in such desperate straits to win enough games to make the playoffs that, that he never got a chance to put a lot of that stuff in. So that having the whole off season with Bo and having had Bo play for him, he's got a lot. There's a bigger head start here now. I'm really interested to see where that offense starts in training camp because. I mean, last year that offense was supposed to carry till the defense got itself together. That's the feeling I had. I'm feeling the same this year, right? They've strengthened and changed the way they're doing defense. Have changed the defense quite a bit, so it might take a little time for that to catch up. Generally, defenses are supposed to be ahead of offenses early, but I'm not sure that's the case here this year. I think that these guys. I want to see how much they hit the ground running. Now they got to figure out a bunch of things. Like they've got way too many receivers. I mean, and I don't mean in numbers. I'm talking about good receivers, people that can play, that have proven they can play in this league or sure look like they can. So that's going to be interesting there. But the middle of the line set, it looks like they're pretty well set to tackle. There's obviously set at running back. We'll see what happens if they go to tight end. If they, that's going to be an interesting one too because the ratios. And we'll do some explaining on all the sites, a little more detail on the ratio because the way the ratio things have changed. And it's very confusing for a lot of people about the designated Americans. So we'll try and find a simple way to do that. And I think we may have to do that through graphs and all of those other visuals. You got a great support tech group here. They're really good at that stuff. I'm not going to touch. I'm just going to say, can you do this kind of thing and get that up there? And we can talk about it, you and I or whoever can talk about it. But it changes. It looks to me, particularly with a Canadian middle linebacker, that there's some ratio flexibility, what you want in this league. You definitely want it. You want it, and also the kind of players even the new ones they brought in, a lot of them can be what they quote unquote call designated Americans because they've been in the league long enough that they can replace a Canadian during the game if they have to, right? You'd rather not see that happen. But does that
But then
change?
There's only so many snaps they can play, and it is complicated.
It is very complicated, and that's what we got to do. I mean, that's what journalists do, not just sports journalists do. We take we should, when we're at our best, we take complicated situations and explain them So the average person, and I don't mean to use the word average as that's probably the wrong word because I hate average, but
Yeah.
so
Someone who's maybe not a diehard fan that follows every second.
That's right.
To be able to explain it to them so they understand.
We do that all the time. I mean, one of my favorite all-time cartoons about journalism is a guy sitting back in his chair working at the New York Times with a blindfold on, and there's a dartboard up there, and instead of the numbers on the dartboard, it has concepts: sewage, politics, sports, war, and he's throwing a dart saying, which thing am I an expert at today? In other words, we're taking all of these complicated things. Malcolm Gladwell does this extremely well. He's probably the best who's ever been at it, and boils down all these complicated principles so the regular human beings can understand it and grasp it and go, I see that now. I get it, and he's taken something quite complicated so that at least it's manageable. You could put it in a sandwich and eat it, so.
We're going to do this a lot throughout the season.
Sure.
I know you and I are going to have a few shows, and it'll be fun. Forge fans, Ticats fans, you'll get the up-to-date information from the Hall of Famer, Steve Milton, and of course, historical information. We had some of that in this conversation, Steve. It's extremely interesting, and not everybody is up to date on all the historical facts. So with your experience, to be able to share it, it's going to be great.
Well, history lives, right? And that's an important thing. We're not going to live in the past here. Believe me. That's the last thing we're going to do is live in the past. We're going to move. This is about the present, future, and a little bit of look into the past. But the past informs us. The past is inside us, all of us, even if we weren't alive then. Because that's what we built upon, right? And it gets us to where we are today a lot of times. So sometimes it helps to have a little context there, and there's a lot going on in the present, and there's an awful lot going on in this present that we're in right now.
Absolutely, there is. I can't wait for the seasons to start, and they're right around the corner. We'll be starting up right away, but
Saturday.
To be able to read Steve Milton's articles, to be able to see him, and to be able to hear him, it's just fantastic. Welcome to the Hamilton Sports Group and the audio networks, and can't wait to read all your stuff and have some conversations with you, Steve. Great to have you as a teammate.
Well, we're off to a good start, RJ, and it's great after, again, all these years to work with you on Encore une fois.
This has been a special presentation of the Ticats Audio Network. If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review wherever you find our content.